So this happened last summer when my buddies and I decided to go camping in a national forest in Montana. It was me, my best friend Chris, his girlfriend Emily, and my cousin Jake. We were all excited to get away from everything for a few days. Just us, nature, and no cell service. We got to the campsite in the late afternoon, right by a river with tall pine trees surrounding us. It was absolutely beautiful. After setting up our tents and getting a fire going, we cooked some hot dogs, drank a few beers, and just talked about random stuff. The sun went down and the stars came out, way brighter than anything we'd ever seen back in the city. At around 11 p.m., Emily said she needed to use the bathroom, and since there were no actual bathrooms, she took a flashlight and walked a little into the trees. A couple minutes later, she came running back, out of breath and pale as a ghost. "There's someone out there," she said, her voice shaking. I heard footsteps, heavy ones. They stopped when I turned my light toward them. Chris and I grabbed our flashlights and went to check it out. We walked a little ways into the woods, shining our lights around, but saw nothing. Still, the uneasy feelings stuck with us, so we decided to keep the fire going all night. Around 2 a.m., just as we were finally starting to relax, we heard movement in the bushes near the river. It wasn't a small animal. These were deliberate, slow steps. Jake, trying to be tough, called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Then we saw something move between the trees. Just out of the fire's glow, a tall, shadowy figure stood watching us. "It's probably a ranger," I whispered to Chris, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Rangers don't just stand there, silent and unmoving. Chris grabbed his flashlight and pointed it directly at the figure. The second the beam hit it, it moved. Fast. Too fast for a person. It darted behind a tree, and for a split second, I saw its face. It wasn't human. The eyes were too big, the mouth too wide, like it had been stretched. It had no color, just pale, almost gray skin. The thing peeked from behind the tree, staring at us. Then it let out this horrible gurgling sound, like a mix between a growl and someone choking. "Get in the car!" I yelled. We grabbed what we could and bolted to the SUV. As we started it up, I looked back. The fire was still crackling, and for a moment, I thought maybe we'd overreacted. But then, just at the edge of the firelight, the thing stepped out. It was taller than any person I've ever seen, hunched over, its arms hanging weirdly long, and it was smiling. We peeled out of there so fast, we barely avoided slamming into a tree. We didn't stop driving until we hit the nearest gas station an hour away. None of us said anything for a while, just trying to process what had happened. The next day, we debated going back for our stuff, but none of us wanted to risk it. Eventually, we decided to tell the park rangers about it. When we described what we saw, the ranger just looked at us, completely serious, and said, "You're not the first ones to see it." He didn't say anything else, just warned us not to go back there. To this day, I have no idea what we saw. And honestly, I don't ever want to find out. My buddies and I, a group of seasoned hikers, decided to tackle Blackwood Mountain. It was infamous among locals, not for its height, but for the unsettling tales whispered about its shadowed ridge. We, being the adventurous types, dismissed them as old wives' tales. We set up camp in a secluded clearing just below the ridge as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As night fell, we lit a roaring campfire, its warmth a comforting contrast to the growing chill. We shared stories, laughed, and sipped on some whiskey, the usual camping camaraderie. But as the night deepened, an eerie silence settled over the clearing, an unsettling stillness that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. The usual nocturnal sounds of the forest seemed to have vanished. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from the ridge above, sending shivers down our spines. It was unlike anything we'd ever heard, a primal sound that spoke of ancient terrors. We exchanged nervous glances, our laughter replaced with a tense silence. My friend, Jake, ever the skeptic, grabbed his flashlight and ventured towards the ridge. "Probably just a bear," he muttered, trying to reassure us, but his voice lacked conviction. A moment later, his flashlight beam flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. A blood-curdling scream shattered the silence, followed by a sickening thud. We scrambled to our feet, grabbing our own flashlights, and rushed towards the ridge. We found Jake lying on the ground, his body twisted at an unnatural angle, his eyes wide with terror. His flashlight lay shattered beside him, its beam casting eerie shadows on the gnarled trees. A sense of dread washed over us, a primal fear that made us want to flee. But curiosity, or perhaps morbid fascination, kept us rooted to the spot. We cautiously ventured further up the ridge, our flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The air grew colder, heavier, as if some unseen presence was watching us. We stumbled upon a clearing where the trees formed a natural amphitheater. In the center, a dark, hulking figure stood silhouetted against the moonlit sky. It was tall, impossibly tall, with broad shoulders and a massive head. Its eyes glowed with an eerie red light, and its mouth was a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. It let out a deafening roar, a sound that seemed to shake the very ground beneath us. We turned and fled, our hearts pounding in our chests, the creature's roars echoing behind us. We didn't stop running until we reached our campsite, where we hastily packed our gear and fled down the mountain, leaving behind our tents and supplies. We never returned to Blackwood Mountain, and we never spoke of what we saw that night. But the image of that monstrous creature, its glowing red eyes and gaping maw, is forever etched in our minds, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadowed corners of the wilderness. The aftermath of our harrowing night on Blackwood Mountain left deep scars. We, Mark, Sarah, Tom, and myself became shadows of our former selves, haunted by the crimson eyes and guttural roars. The wilderness, once our sanctuary, now felt like a predatory maw waiting to consume us. Months later, I stumbled upon fragmented lore while researching the mountain's history. It spoke of a forgotten tribe, the Keepers of the Ridge, who worshipped ancient malevolent entities dwelling within the mountain's depths. These entities, they believed, were the source of the mountain's unnerving power. Driven by a morbid curiosity and a desperate need for answers, Mark and I decided to return. Sarah and Tom, understandably, refused to relive the nightmare. We packed our gear, this time armed with more than just flashlights and bravado, and began the arduous trek up the mountain. The familiar trails felt alien, the once vibrant forest now a silent, watchful observer. We reached our previous campsite, an unsettlingly pristine clearing, devoid of any trace of our previous presence. The air hung heavy, thick with an unseen dread. As we ascended towards the shadowed ridge, the temperature plummeted and an unnatural fog rolled in, obscuring our surroundings. We discovered strange symbols etched into the rocks, symbols that pulsed with an eerie, faint light. Following these symbols, we found a hidden cave entrance concealed behind a waterfall. The cave was a labyrinth of winding tunnels, the air thick with the stench of damp earth and something else, something ancient and foul. Deeper within, we found a chamber adorned with grotesque murals depicting the entities from the legends, their forms shifting and writhing in the flickering light of our headlamps. In the center of the chamber, a colossal stone altar stood, stained with what looked like dried blood. Upon it rested a massive skull, its crimson eyes glowing with an inner fire. As we approached, a low, resonant hum filled the chamber, vibrating through our bones. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a deafening roar echoed through the cave. The entities from the murals seemed to awaken, their forms solidifying, their eyes burning with malevolent intent. We turned to flee, but the cave entrance was blocked by a towering figure, its form a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and shadow. We fought our way through the labyrinth, the entities snapping at our heels, their roars echoing through the tunnels. We emerged from the cave, blinking in the harsh sunlight, only to find ourselves surrounded by the same towering figures, their eyes burning with crimson fury. We fought with a ferocity born of desperation, but our weapons were useless against their otherworldly forms. We were on the verge of being overwhelmed when a blinding light erupted from the cave entrance, followed by a series of deafening roars. The entities recoiled, their forms dissolving into shadows. We seized the opportunity and fled, scrambling down the mountain, our hearts pounding in our chests. We didn't stop running until we reached our car, leaving behind the horrors of Blackwood Mountain. We never returned, but the echoes of the old ones still haunt our dreams, a chilling reminder of the ancient evils that lurk in the shadowed corners of the world. I still get chills thinking about it, even 2 years later. It's one of those things that messes with your head, makes you question what's real. My dad and I, we've always been into the outdoors. We'd take these camping trips deep into the wilderness just to get away from it all. This particular spot, Whispering Pines, was a gem. Hiking trails, a zip line, a bit touristy, but with a real sense of history, being on old Native American land. The first night was perfect. Families at other campsites, campfires crackling, kids laughing, the kind of peaceful night you dream of when you go camping. We cooked hot dogs, roasted marshmallows, cracked open a few beers, and chatted with our neighbors. Classic camping vibes. But the second night, that's when things went sideways. We found out we were the only ones left in the park. Everyone else had checked out. At first, we were stoked, the whole place to ourselves. We spent the day hiking, fishing, just chilling out. At one point, we even put on a creepy podcast while sitting by the river, just for kicks. As the sun started to set, we headed back to the campsite, stopping at the park's info center to charge our phones and grab some snacks. On the way back, a weird feeling crept in. The woods felt different, heavier. The sky had this off-putting color, like twilight was stuck. My dad turned to me and said, "Doesn't this feel off, like we're in some kind of dream?" And he was right. The forest seemed endless, and I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. We kept glancing over our shoulders, half expecting to see something lurking in the trees. Back at the campsite, we stayed close to the fire, trying to act normal. We roasted more marshmallows, put on some music, even smoked a joint to take the edge off. Not exactly your typical father-son bonding moment, but desperate times, right? As darkness fell, the unease grew. Around 9 p.m., we heard this massive boom, like a tree falling. It was loud, close, echoing through the woods from the direction of the river. We grabbed our flashlights, but saw nothing. Bigfoot, we joked, but it didn't feel funny. A few minutes later, another boom, louder this time. We shone our lights again, but the forest just swallowed the beams. Then a third boom, even closer. That's when the real fear hit. Whatever it was moving towards us, circling the campsite. Before we could even process it, a fourth boom, just yards away. Adrenaline kicked in, wiping out any trace of the weed. My dad and I scrambled into the tent, throwing the remaining firewood on the fire, hoping the flames would scare whatever it was away. Just as my dad was about to zip up the tent, the loudest boom yet, so close the ground shook. My dad froze, staring into the darkness. "It was standing right there," he whispered. "What was standing there?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't know," he said. "It was like a wall of darkness." He sat by the zipper, clutching a small knife, our only weapon. I buried myself in my sleeping bag. Then this weird vibration started, a low hum that filled the air, making my chest tight. "You hear that?" my dad whispered. I nodded, too scared to speak. After what felt like an eternity, we heard another sound, something inhuman, like a distorted animal growl mixed with static. It was terrifying. We stayed frozen, barely breathing. Then, the strangest thing happened. We just blacked out. No memory of falling asleep. We woke up in the middle of the tent, my dad still clutching the knife. My phone was dead, and so was his, even though we'd charged them fully the night before. Outside, it was still pitch black. The air was cold and still. The food we'd left out was untouched, and the fire was just ashes. It felt like we'd stepped into another dimension. We packed up in silence, not saying a word until we were in the car. We both knew we'd experienced the same thing, a feeling of being watched, hunted. We told my mom when we got home, but she thought we were crazy, maybe drugged. But it was real. Whatever it was out there. My dad saw it, or at least a part of it, and it wasn't human. We've never been back to Whispering Pines, or any campsite for that matter. Some things are better left undisturbed.